Every once in a while, we're treated to a comic book story that perfectly emulates and evokes the character that we love, that we've known for years, becomes a fixture in what we believe to be this character on the hero's journey, and this story is not it. What's up, all you 90s bad comic book plot-loving dudes and dudettes? Toybiz here, and I got yet another Toybiz Retro-Shiz video for you. Today, we're going to be looking at the Spider-Man, the animated series, Maximum Clonage BJ's exclusive box set. This is one of the most obscure and hard to find figure sets for Spider-Man, the animated series in the Toybiz era, and I got a pretty good tale to tell about it. We're going to take a look at each of the individual 8 figures, because each one pretty much is a clone as in of itself of a different figure. So let's get into it. This is the Maximum Clonage Spider-Man, the animated series box set from Toybiz. And while I got all you clones here, I just want to say thanks so much for watching my Toybiz Retro-Shiz videos. If you like them, hit the like button, leave a comment, let's talk some toys, and be sure to subscribe, because I got a heck of a lot more Toybiz videos on the way. Now, just before we get into the box set, let me set the stage just a little bit in terms of the story behind this for me in collecting it. When I was a little kid, I had to do a lot of research. We didn't have the internet. We didn't really know what was coming out. You kind of had Wizard and Toy Fair magazines in terms of what was coming out. They always had little articles every single month. So another great way to find out what, and actually it was a pretty ingenious thing for Toybiz, was that there was a phone number you could call, a hotline just for them. You could listen to a recording. I remember the guy's voice telling you exactly which characters, what the box set were, and where you could get them. It said, coming soon, Spider-Man, the animated series, the Maximum Clonage box set, a BJ's exclusive. You have KB Toys as a kid, Toys R Us, Target, Walmart to an extent. For someone living in California, what in the holy heck was BJ's? I think my dad got a couple laughs out of that one. I would call the phone number every once in a while. I even talked to the customer service rep. She could not tell me what BJ's was. They had never heard of it. There was no internet to look it up, nothing like that. Let's fast forward. Probably around 5-6 months later, I was in Massachusetts. I was on a family trip, and we were going to have dinner. So we're driving along, and I'm looking out the window, and we go by all these places and buildings and everything, and lo and behold, there is a place called BJ's. I flung up against the window. I remember this. I was like, oh my God, we have to go. We have to go check it out. This could be it. We had dinner. We traveled back, and we stopped at BJ's. Now, BJ's is essentially Costco for the East Coast. You need a membership to get into this store. We didn't have a membership. My mom explained what we were there to do, and they gave us Express Pass, like a one-time only kind of use, right? We didn't even know if they had them on the shelf yet. The lady was like, you know what? I think I know what you're talking about. It's in this aisle, blah, blah, blah. We get to the aisle. I'm looking all around. Stop dead in my tracks. They're on a huge rack, right? Spider-Man Maximum Clonage box set is sitting right there at the top, and they had a zillion of these things. And right next to it was a X-Men box set as well. It was $25 if I remember correctly. We got it. I was absolutely stoked. Such a great story to tell for something just so meaningless in its sense, but meant so much to me as a collector. The package was huge. I had to take all the figures out. We had to leave the package. The package was awesome, as you can see. I brought them home on the plane, got home, put them right there in my collection case. Let's get into the figures. So the first one out of the 8 is actually a just simple Peter Parker Spider-Man. He actually didn't come with an extra head or anything, no webbing effects. But this Peter Parker was interesting because it was one of the first times where we got an actual just Peter Parker on a Spider-Man body. And it is a reuse of a lot of the older Spider-Man figures that have come before, but nonetheless, it was a good character to throw in there. It would have been nice to have an alternate Spider-Man head just to have it kind of coincide better with the other Spider-Men that are in the box. He sort of shares the same exact head mold as the Wave 2 Peter Parker. It does look a little bit more streamlined, but it does look to be spot on in some cases. Just up close here are the two heads, just a few minor flesh and hair differences to be sure. This Spider-Man's articulation was at the shoulders, at the elbows, kicked out, knees, and they decided to throw in some foot articulation. This was a great Spider-Man Peter Parker to have, and emphasized who is the actual Spider-Man of this box set. Next up was the Peter Parker clone Ben Reilly, and the real difference here was that they gave us a very heavily reused head sculpt, and as you can see with the previous Spider-Man sharing the same head, this one shared the exact same body. A simple repaint, but again, just very funny in the sense that this is an entire maximum clonage pack, and you are essentially just getting a bunch of reused figures. That is a tiny little head. Very 90s. The articulation was in the shoulders, at the elbows. Now, he is supposed to have a waist swivel, but mine has never ever worked. It's almost glued in place. He kicked out and he had knees. Interesting to have a 90s Ben Reilly figure to go along with the Scarlet Spider figure. The greatest character ever to cut up a sweatshirt and use it as a costume. Such a great character back in the 90s. He was so much fun. Very interesting. Not exactly used best in the story that was presented to us, but the costume, man, that was such a 90s. He had a tattered sweatshirt, this belt, these gauntlets that were the web shooters, and then he had these house arrest looking devices on his ankles. This was just a really cool reuse of a Spider-Man figure, one that's basically this body mold right here. As you can see, a couple switches here and there. The articulation was at the head, at the shoulders, and the elbows. These were able to be moved around as they were just slipped over the hands. His belt moved as well. He kicked out, had knees, he had articulation at the feet. The Scarlet Spider Man, just one of the greatest Spider-Man costumes ever. And this, of course, leads us to everyone's favorite character from the Maximum Clonage storyline, one that probably no one has ever heard of, Spider-Side. This is one of Miles Warren's clones that was able to shapeshift, stretch, basically an evil T-1000 version of Spider-Man. You could chop off his head, he would regenerate. It's like a weird Terminator Spider-Man. I always thought this is like great costume. Why does he have such a tiny little head? Why did they do that? Why didn't they just give him a normal sized head? I know in the comics he was drawn a little bit weird, very 90s type of style. I could see why they did that, but at the same time, it's so aesthetically weird. Now, of course, he did share a body mold with Venom 2, which we will look at in the upcoming Spider-Man Wave 4 that I will have hopefully soon. I'm just waiting on something a little special for the video. It's funny that these two characters both have such tiny little heads for their bodies. In terms of articulation, his head was supposed to move, but it's thoroughly glued on there, much like the Ben Reilly waist. His arms moved only at the shoulders, nothing at the elbows. He kicked out, and he had knees. I absolutely love the costume on Spider-Side, and it's such an interesting Spider-Man type character to have, but the figure just did not do him justice. Next up, and to be quite honest with you, an interesting choice to put in this box set. We had a repainted version of the Hydro Man to make the Sandman. Now, the Sandman in the Spider-Man the Animated Series, due to licensing issues and rights for a movie that was coming up, they never actually put him in the animated series, but he did make his debut in this Maximum Clonage box set, and like I said, he's just a standard repaint of the Hydro Man. But as you can see, Maury Bench or Sandman, same exact. Even down to the backside where you would have a water this is just the laziness. A water thing that would go into Hydro Man, but now you have a water system for the Sandman, and as you would pump that, he would actually spit out water. He does have nice paint. He looks like the Sandman, but that chest, Rob Liefeld must have been drawn this action figure. Haha. It was pretty awesome to finally have a Sandman figure, although a better Sandman figure would pop up in the very last wave of official Spider-Man the Animated Series. He had articulation at the shoulders, his head rotated back and forth, he had a waist, and he kicked out and then went side to side, and he had a little bit of a ball joint at the hip. He had knees, and like I said, he squirted water from the Sandman. Another one of the Professor's dear clones was Kane. Now, Kane was a very interesting Peter Parker, as he was covered in horrible scars. he was just a messed up sort of Phantom of the Opera monster version. But to be honest with you, in terms of perfectly capturing a character for this particular box set and the storyline and everything, I think they actually did a great job with Kane. He was a very well done figure. I liked all the intricate little paint details that he had every which way. The head, while reused from another figure, in fact the entire body was reused, but it worked. It worked really well, and I even like his little tattered pink cape. Had a little bit of a black wash to it, and he had on his backside something that used to fit from another figure, like I said, that would go in, but hey, they didn't care. You just slap a pink cape on him. It doesn't even fit. But dang it all, it just looked fantastic. The head, what would rotate? It's very stuck. It almost feels like I'm going to break it if I do it any more than that. He had articulation at the elbows and at the shoulders. Nothing at the waist. Kicked out, and then he also had knees as well. This was a great Kane figure, and one that I wish they would do a Marvel Legends version in this day and age. And next up we have the Jackal, Miles Warren. This is a total reused figure from the X-Men 2099 wave. Halloween Jack. While it does resemble the Jackal didn't really have these things going on. He had a very interesting cloth cape, almost like a Spawn Doctor Strange thing going on. It was tattered, very felt-ish, but overall he had nice sculpting every which way, nice hands. The feet were always funny to me. He had articulation at the shoulders, nothing in terms of the elbows, but he had rotation at the bicep, and he had rotation at the hands. Nothing at the waist, kicked out, and he had the Sandman sort of legs where they would go out to the sides as well. Knee articulation, and then foot articulation with rotation at the head. On the back, something was supposed to go in there, and if I'm not mistaken, he was supposed to have a ponytail. It was really awesome to have a Jackal figure, but if we're being completely honest, it was a great attempt, but totally missed the mark in terms of the Jackal. Will the real Spider-Man please stand up? And as you can see, with a lot of Toybiz figures, a heavy reuse of the bodies of the various Spider-Man figures, including in the same exact set, just a different paint scheme. Minus these two, however, this Spider-Man right here actually came out in a later wave of the Spider-Man the Animated Series, and the only difference with the Maximum Clonage set was that he was a lighter blue, and the eyes were bigger on this particular one. This Spider-Man was the Spider-Man that took over for a little bit. It was revealed Ben Reilly was the new Peter Parker, and then it wasn't. But a lot of people love this costume. I have a love-hate kind of thing going on. It's very nostalgic. You had these Spider-Man boots that went off to the side. It was odd, to say the least. In terms of articulation, his head moved. He had it at the shoulders. Elbows moved. He kicked out, and he had knees with some ankle rotation as well. This Spider-Man was a classic 90s costume. Very evocative of the times, and a great Spider-Man to have for your animated series collection. So that is going to do it for my look at the Toybiz Spider-Man the Animated Series Maximum Clonage Box Set exclusive to BJ's. Quite the interesting tale, I think, but just one that I absolutely love to have. It would just have bugged the absolute you-know-what out of me to never include this in my collection. A lot of great character selections from the 90s are in this set. A lot of them missed the mark. What do you guys think of this box set? Something you have to add to your collection now. Any favorites? Anything that bothers you as much as it bothered me? Comment below. Let me know. Let's talk some toys. I'm going to leave you guys with that. As always, drink some great coffee, eat some great food, but most importantly, didn't Spider-Man throw his clone down like a smokestack and it died, and then the Jackal died and Tarantula died? What is with this storyline? And when you do, let me know what you found. I'll talk to you guys soon. Adios.